Welcome to listening to the Leading Hope Podcast. My name is VJ Williams, here with my friend and pastor, Kevin Jack. Thank you for joining us and taking time out of your day to become a better leader. If you're new, we release a new episode every Wednesday. We'd love for you to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. Get that downloaded every Wednesday morning. Also share this with a friend on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. And please rate and review or both on Apple Podcasts. You won't believe how that helps get this podcast in the hands of so many more leaders like you, trying to get better like us. Visit leadinghope.online to get updates and find out more about the Leading Hope community. Kevin,
I accidentally looked into the camera.
Did you?
Yeah, it was your camera.
It was mine?
Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
This is a little awkward because I kind of like turned my head right there, and there it was.
Yep, and you thought, man, this is an awesome view. This is an awesome view, is what I saw.
There it is.
But hey, this is an exciting episode. You've titled this Learning Humility. We're in episode 233.
Yeah.
What do you got today?
So I want to talk just first set foundation and then insight recently into the idea of humility. Okay, but I want to set foundation just to make sure we're same page. So like, what is humility? Humility is not a fake lack of confidence. It's not like, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Fake lack of confidence of, hey, that was great. Oh, I'm just trying. It's like, well, if you think it was great, you can just be like, yeah, it was great. Thank you. I appreciate that. So it's not that like, oh, I'm trying to be humble, so I'm pretending that I'm,
Talk
does that make
more
sense?
about that. What is that? And describe that.
Well, I think we know humility is important. And so we think humility is dumbing ourselves down or downplaying our gifting in a lot of ways. And that's not humility.
Got it.
So just to acknowledge, like, humility is not this, like, false persona of, like, I actually don't think I'm good at anything. I'm surprised when anything in my life goes well. I'm completely unaware of any of my natural talents or giftings.
Okay.
So that's not humility. So I would just say, like, real simple, like, bullseye to put it on there, that humility is the absence of preoccupation with yourself.
Got it.
Okay?
Yeah.
C.S. Lewis had the famous statement, humility is not thinking less of yourself. Humility is thinking of yourself less.
So good.
So not belittling yourself, but you are not preoccupied with who you are and what you're doing.
Yeah.
So then second foundational piece I just want to lay in here is the idea of why humility is so important. And there's kind of two sides to the same coin. If I quote a scripture, Proverbs 16:18, pride goes before destruction. So we understand that, and then the end of it is a haughty spirit before a fall, which if there's any word I could bring back, it would be the word haughty.
Oh, really?
But not in not in like the other context of haughty.
Could you
like,
spell it for us?
HAUGHT. Thank you for helping me dig myself out of the pit that I quickly jumped into.
But I like that. I thought you were going to spell it like the kids do, like HAWTY.
Nope.
Show me
Nope, not that one.
Not that one.
That's not what I'm looking for.
Good. That's great. Glad you clarified that for everyone.
So the first side of it is the pride goes before destruction.
Yeah.
The other side of it is, I would just say that humility reveals the gap of what you can grow into. So like, if you're not humble, let me make it like more simple. Like, if you've already reached the ceiling, there's nowhere else to go. If you're already on top, you've got no room to grow. And so humility within there, what it does is it reveals, like, I still know that I have room to grow, which is why false humility accomplishes nothing of someone being like, I'm completely unaware that I'm gifted in these areas. You go, well, then you don't know what you can build on. You don't know what your natural strengths are. But being humble acknowledges, I know that I'm not there yet. I still have room to grow. So you can view humility as to either side. Pride goes before destruction, or it reveals the gap of where you still need to grow.
That's good. Yeah.
So that's just kind of like foundation that I want to set. Now, here's the main idea I want to get at today is I used to think that humility was the default and pride was learned over time. I no longer believe that. I now believe that pride is the default and humility actually has to be learned. Like I used to believe that people like started humble, and now I believe they start ignorant and they quickly move to pride. And humility is the thing that has to be taught over time.
What made you change your mind about that preconceived notion?
So 1,000 different things, some of which are too finger pointy to really extrapolate on in this podcast episode. Is that fair to say?
I mean, sure.
Evidence I've seen in other people's lives.
Yeah.
But if I give like one from my own life, is I used to laugh because I talked to my kids about wanting to teach them something with like basketball would be one of them. And I can remember now, this is not like every single one of my kids at some point in time have said this. They've said, "Oh, I know basketball." Like this idea of like, "Hey, let me teach you something." No, I know basketball.
Yeah.
Like, no, you know a little.
You know the basketball goes in the hoop.
Yep. But like this idea of like, I have now reached the apex, I have nothing more to learn, was just like, this is the dumbest thing I've ever heard of. And then I was watching the JJ Redick, LeBron James podcast on basketball. And I remember I'm just watching this and they're like breaking down plays and different sets and stuff like that. And I'm going, they're using terms I've never heard of. They're talking about things. I really have no clue what is going on. And it was just amazing to me in this moment because I'm looking at my kids and I'm going, you're saying you know basketball. You do not. But I'm at the same time thinking, I know basketball. Like, I know what's going on. And then all of a sudden to hear people at a whole nother level talk about it was like, oh, I don't understand basketball. I don't really grasp what's going on either.
Yeah.
And it was just this moment of to realize, to say like how quickly and easily, as soon as you have any level of competency, how quickly and easily pride sets in.
Yeah. I agree.
And so the idea being is to acknowledge that for every single one of us, it's a radical difference to view it as, well, I don't want to let myself become prideful, versus assuming pride is already there.
Yeah.
I need to learn how to be humble. And if I could, like, hopefully one of the things I want to talk through today is there is a difference between like ignorance and competency. Okay, we understand there's a significant gap between ignorance and competency, but there is also a massive gap between competency and mastery. And what I have found is that the closer people are, those terms make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
The closer people are just to that bar of competency, the more likely they are to be arrogant, the more likely they are to be prideful.
Yeah.
And the closer they move to mastery, the more likely they are to be humble. And so just assuming that the more arrogant and prideful you are in any different field is probably evidence of how far you still have to grow in that field, because pride becomes the default.
Can you explain what you mean, the difference between mastery and what was the other term you just used?
Competency?
Yeah, because I think that's where people think I would just... Yeah, I'd be interested in knowing what those two are definition-wise.
Yeah, so I would say, let me, if I could do like practical things and hopefully stuff we've taught people who've hung out with the podcast, is like, I have known for decades the distinction between mission, vision, and values. Mm-hmm. And so if someone was talking mission and vision and values, my initial thought was, I already know this. It wasn't until about 10 years ago I knew how to use them. And I knew how powerful of tools they actually were.
Yeah.
Now, there's a massive difference between knowing, I would say, like, this is the difference between any home repair project. I know what the tools are. I don't know how to use them in the level in which they're meant to be used.
Right.
And that bar of I know what it is competency. Like, that's what's taking place in that moment.
Yeah.
The full utilization of it is where mastery comes in.
I got you.
And I think people, like, they bump into competency and they assume they've arrived. And so all of a sudden we're less open. And now we don't have that gap between where we are and where we can still become and where we can still grow, which is the real problem.
So you're saying, well, I mean, what I'm hearing is that competency is almost the starting block for the thing that you actually need to do to get to where you need to be.
Competency is the starting block in which learning humility needs to take place.
Yeah.
Everybody's humble at the point of ignorance.
Yeah.
Because like we know,
Well, people like to.
I don't know.
I mean, just to not to make it too simple of idea, but like I know people who, whether they pretend or not, doesn't matter, don't understand anything ever. and
Sorry, that was really funny to me.
and then the opposite of that is everybody knows everything all the time.
Yep.
Where are we in here in describing what you're trying to
Like where are you and I specifically,
What,
or just
where
in
is,
general?
because you need to be humble is a piece of both,
Yes. Yeah, that's a great phrase.
right? Like it's a piece of both, but how do you tangibly, applicably get where you need to go, knowing nothing and knowing everything?
That's a great question.
Because I think
So-
I know people that live in one side or the other
Yeah.
most of the time,
So here's what I don't know how, like,
which is hard.
so let's talk like actual implementation.
Okay.
Because I hope that idea is at least set in enough that people are going,
Great.
oh, I actually do. I need to learn humility.
Yeah.
If I give another example from my own life, I remember like when I first started preaching and to go like, I had read some books, I had done it. I had been in small churches and I was just like, oh, I kind of know how to do this.
Yeah.
And then I can remember going to a conference and watching people and being like, I don't know how to do what they're doing.
Right.
What they are doing is a completely different thing
Yeah.
than what I'm actually doing.
Yes.
And like that was a moment. So the phrase that we use in culture is we'll use the phrase humbled. They say like, oh, I was humbled. And that is the moment in which you have the opportunity to learn humility. Because I really need people to hear
good.
this. Like being humbled is an event.
Oh, okay.
Being humble or having humility, we'll just use that word because it's a little easier, is a posture. You can be humbled and not carry with you the posture of humility, which is like really, we're talking about the posture of teachability, knowing you still have room to grow.
Yeah.
But that event of humbled is important.
Yeah, I think that's a good disclaimer. I mean,
Yeah. And I think humbled comes at two times. It either comes in the moment in which we realize we're not as good as we thought we were, where we thought we were competent and we realize we're actually ignorant. That is the brutal humbling.
Right.
Like that is the one that hurts.
Yep.
The other humbling, which is actually energizing, is when competency brushes up against mastery. That when someone who is competent in something and feels like they get it, all of a sudden brush up against someone who has mastered it, it's like this sense of, oh, I've got so much more room to grow.
Yeah.
Like that is a humbling that doesn't hurt.
Yeah.
It only energizes.
Yeah.
Which is the best.
And that, I mean, so you're trying to make sure that that's how people are learning how to be humble, is that one and not the other one? Because I think both are effective.
I think you take it wherever it comes.
There you go.
I'm
Okay.
saying you can avoid painful humbling
Yeah.
by deliberately exposing yourself to an energizing humbling.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And I think one of the easiest ways to see it is honestly sports world.
Yeah.
Is like we're like, oh, I'm a pretty good athlete, and then all of a sudden you play with someone who's like played at a professional level, and you're like, I'm not.
Yep. Yeah.
Which is fine.
It's played out pretty quickly in those environments.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would say like that is a large piece. Now, here's the other thing that I think is kind of unique is if someone has learned, does all this concept make sense so far?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I'm afraid I was a little too scattered.
No, I mean, it's a hard subject for everybody.
Yeah.
I mean, because I think at the end of the day, you think it's your highest level, and it's so nuanced too.
Yes.
Because when you're at the top of your game, whatever that might be, in one environment, as you change levels,
Correct.
you are no longer at the peak of your competency because you're doing things you've never done before.
So if I could just kind of translate my framework for what you just said.
Yeah.
Is stupid phrase. Birds of a feather flock together.
Yeah.
Like we run with people
Yeah.
in a similar talent pool.
Sure.
As your skills increase, you will find yourself moving from the ceiling of your talent pool to the floor of the next.
Right.
Like you'll move from the best in your field to the worst in your group.
Right.
And that is hard.
Sure.
But most people, they only view the people who they're with, and they're just like, so I'm good.
Yeah.
And what I'm really after for people is, what I have found is the people who are closest to mastery, they're not just humble around other masters of their craft. Those are the people who are willing to learn from anyone.
Yeah.
Because they understand the insight they need to get better doesn't necessarily come from the field that they're in. And I think the reason why that is because they have learned humility over time. And so they've learned how to be teachable throughout their entire development and their entire progress. And so because of that, now they're at a spot where they go, I've learned humility, and so I understand I'll take insight no matter where I can get it to make me better.
Yeah, and I think while you might become the bottom of the next tier as you grow through those being competent to being masters, I met Marcus Meekum once, and I talked to him. He's a pastor, and he was a growing church, planning campuses and such. And I got to talk to him, and I don't know how we got on the subject, but it was very similar. He's like, I thought like I was the guy that was doing really great stuff for our city and regionally and maybe even a little nationally. Yeah. He goes, until I started hanging around the other guys that were doing it, and he's like, I felt like I was very small in all of it. But the cool thing about him specifically that I really really keyed in on, he was humble regardless of who he was with. Yeah. So he didn't. Yes. And I think that's the key that we're really maybe, I don't know if you're going to get there, we're talking about it, is you're not humble because of the environment you're in. Correct. You're humble because that's who you are. Correct. You know what I mean? It's not like because I'm in and running with a different crowd, I'm humble because they're better than me or they do more things or they're smarter. Right. It's a decision every day that I'm going to put myself in a positive manner of being humble.
I can remember there was, I think I saw it on a reel because there's no way I was watching MLB TV. No offense against MLB. I just wasn't watching it. And I remember there's this little clip of Pete Rose was showing Alex Rodriguez and Frank Thomas how to position yourself in the batter's box to prep the pitcher for what pitch you wanted him to pitch. Yeah. I remember they're like watching, they're just like blown away. Two people who were top of their game, some of the greatest hitters, blown away by the insight on there. And it was just like, I'm not saying anything about their personal character or anything like that. Yeah. But I consistently find that the people who are the closest to mastery also have the most amount of humility per their craft. I'm not saying per their character in life and everything else, but per how they want to grow. And those two are correlated. Like, that's not accidental that goes together. And so, like, I watch that. People who are masters are the most teachable. And then I continuously watch people who barely have a level of competency who aren't. Yeah. And it's like feedback all of a sudden is met with, well, how about this? And I don't agree with that. And I disagree. And it's just to go, you are limiting the level that you're able to be at. And the thing people need to be aware of is that humility has to be learned. Pride is the default. And if you don't kill pride and cultivate humility, you're going to be stuck barely above, if not below, competency. And you're not even going to realize how far you are from mastery.
Yeah, and based on that last comment, what is that thing to help someone take the first step to kill the pride in their life so they can start thinking about what it looks like to have a humble posture?
Well, I think there's events, but the reality is that it's your choice. Yeah, it's absolutely your choice to be teachable, and you may get humbled or find yourself in a spot where you're delightfully humbled. But at the end of the day, you ultimately still have a choice to believe you already know all you need to know, or you have room to grow.
Yeah, that's good.
I didn't mean for that to rhyme, but it did.
But it did. All right. How do you want to end this podcast today, 2:33?
I just want to give that last line again of just say, like, understand pride is the default. Humility has to be learned.
It's good. That's good. All right. Hey, if you're new to the podcast or haven't yet subscribed, mean the world to us if you did that now. Also post about it, rate and review, or both. You won't believe how that helps get this podcast in the hands of so many more leaders just like you, trying to get better like us. We love hearing your stories, how the podcast is working in your life and business. If you have a story, visit leadinghope.online and send that to us. You can DM us on Instagram or Facebook. We would love to hear from you. And remember, everyone has 20 minutes to learn to become a better leader. Make it count.